Okay, now let's understand something called CSS inheritance. This is another important concept apart from CSS specificity. In inheritance, we have already seen such things. Okay, that let's say I have. mm so let's remove all the unnecessary things right now. Let's say simply div and class my div is there, and let's say nothing is there. And right now I see that yeah, its color is black. That is fine. Let's give a style in section. So tag section tag has color red, but I have given color red to section, but even the div elements, the content inside div element is also becoming red, right? So this is what is called inheritance in CSS. Okay, pretty simple. We have seen this already at many places. Okay, so CSS property values, uh, sometimes they are inherited from their parent elements in the child elements, right? But the important point to remember is that some things are inherited, some things are not inherited. And we cannot remember all these, but slowly you will just remember a few of them. And if you are having any confusion, then you can Google a bit and go to Mozilla documentation to see whether that is inherited or not. But in general, I will give you a few examples. So properties like color, which we just saw, like they are inherited, right? Color is inherited from a section to div. So properties like color, font family, font size. So if I change, let's say here font size, let's say 30 pixel, right? Then we'll see that this is becoming bigger, right? So not only anything inside section, so anything inside section will be obviously bigger, but the color and font size of div is also changing. Not only this thing is changing, but div is also changing. So color, font size, font family, this font related all things, right? Line height, list style, you understand? So bullets in the ul and li tags. Okay, those things are also inherited. Visibility, we have not seen, but we'll see later. But visibility means you can say something like something is hidden or not, visibility hidden or something. So if you hide the parent element, everything inside child will be also hidden, right? So that is also inherited. Cursor is also inherited. I think we have not discussed it, but let's see. Right now, you see that if you hover over these things, so let's have a border. So let's have a border. Let's say 1 pixel solid blue. Okay, so you see that what is the area? What is the area in which this whole thing is there? And you can have a specific border for div also. So let's say only for div have a border something like let's say green. Okay, then you see that this lower part, this hello part, is having border green, and this whole container is having border blue. That is fine. Now let's see that if I write something and when I hover over it, you see nothing happens. My cursor is like normal, but you can change these things like normal. You can Google a bit these things. This CS property called cursor, and if you write cursor is equal to cursor pointer. So if you do cursor colon, then you will see all various things which are there, right? Crosshair, default, grab, this hands thing is there, move. So all those. So right now we will have used the pointer value of the cursor. Then if I refresh, then you'll see that this thing when I hover over it. Then why hover over it? Because only for this section, the thing is becoming uh, I'm setting the cursor pointer, right? So cursor for that area will not be visible until unless I go to that area, right? So when I go to that area, then I see the cursor is changing to pointer. And obviously if you click, nothing will happen. It's just that you have changed the pointer, and that's why you should not change the pointer cursor to pointer until unless this is something like link or something. So by default link will have already the cursor pointer, right? But let's say you are doing something else, like let's say button element is there, and you and div is in somewhere, it is wrapped in, and by default it is coming something like this, but you want to give a feel of like click or something, then you can change the pointer in that case. Okay. However, there are some properties which are not inherited, like height, width, margin, padding. Okay, these are not inherited. Okay, so it's not that I removed this border. Okay, I removed this border. Then it's not that if outer thing I have given border, section I have given border, then div also automatically will take border, span also will automatically take border. It is not taking, right? I have provided section, I have provided border to section, then the border is only applied to section, not to its children. But if I applied color to section, then color is applied to not only section but all its children also. You understand? So if you write something like here, then direct children, then obviously it is applied to that. But not only that, it is applied to all its subsequent descendants also. So in a sense we understand that some things are inherited and others are not inherited. Okay, and sort of these sort of things are like sort of common sense, but initially you can have a remember a few of these and google a bit, but slowly you will see that most of the things are common, because if I'm changing color, then yeah, the color of the whole thing should change, right? But border, like if I apply border at one thing and everything is taking border, then that is like obviously not desirable, right? So based on the common sense, this people who have designed css, they have created something like this, that what should be inherited and what should not be inherited. Okay, now let's give you an example of width not being inherited. So we saw that color is inherited, that is fine, right? But if I say and let's say it's so right now what is happening? Right now it is something like this. Let's make this somewhat simpler. Section div. Okay, so let's make something like this. Okay, and let's have a border for simplicity. So let's say this border is 1 pixel solid let's say blue, and this is, let's say, 1 pixel solid green. Okay, so if you see that when I was not having border and div, then this whole thing, external thing, which is section, is having border blue. That is fine. When I put green, then you see that another border will come, and which is like sort of inside that, but both are like joined, that's why it is not properly visible. And if you want to make them visible, you can give a small padding, let's say padding all sides of 2 pixel. Then you can see that not padding, I think you should give margin, because div is there, right? So div is internal, so margin all sides, let's say 2 pixel. Then you can clearly see that yeah, this outer whole thing is blue and this internal thing is green, if you can see what I wanted to show, right? Okay, anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that, see, color is automatically changing. So color, I gave the color of text, the color is red, and automatically in div also red is coming, which means that that is changing. However, if I do something like width, let's say width is, let's say, 50%. What does 50% mean? 50% means that whatever the parent available container is there of section, the section width should be 50% of that. Now what is the whole available container? Whole available container is the entire width of HTML body, right? Now if I do something like this, then you will see that this thing is 50% of the whole thing. But you see that this rule of width 50% is not applied here. It is applied only on section. Why? See, obviously this has also become smaller, but what does 50% mean? 50% means that it should be 50% of the container. For div, the container is section. So if I write something like here again, width 50%, then you see what is happening is that I'm saying that my section is 50% of its parent. Its parent is this much big, the 50% of this thing, right? And width is 50% of its parents, and div's width is 50% of its parent. Div's parent is section's width is this much, then div's width is 50% of that much. And that's why you can see that this thing is that. But mind you that I had to write this rule automatically. It did not inherit. If it would have automatically inherited, then width 50%, width 50% here, but it did not happen. Width automatically, whatever the full width it takes, automatically, if I don't apply this rule, then you see that nothing has happened. Even if I applied here 50%, that sort of rule is not applied to the internal div, and that's why it is again 100% of its parent, not the 50%, right? So which means that this rule I have to properly write. It did not automatically got inherited, and that is what I meant by giving this example, that properties like height, width, these things are not inherited. Okay, now I think you have fairly understood that what is the difference between something which is inherited like color, something like not inherited, right? You have to write it properly. And if like there are this might look obvious, but just let me tell you that the rules of the the closest parent wins, right? So for example, let's say I have body, okay, and in body I put let's say color is equal to let's say some blue violet color, right? Now you see that color is still red because of this thing, if I comment this color red, then you see that color is blue violet. Okay, so basically what is happening is that div's parent is section's parent is body. This color is equal to blue violet is applied on body, right? But section is closer. So if to the closer parents no color is applied, then it is taking from body. But if the somewhat closer parent is having some color, then the inheritance will happen from the closer one. Okay, and that's why it is red, which is from applied from section. And if again something like again inside here again something like some other div will be there, and inside this div will be, then if you apply and you put some class here, right? Then if you apply what color, something color here, then that will be applied overwritten by whatever you have given in section, so that will not be applied, right? So the point is simple, that whatever is the closest, that thing is applied. Fair enough. And that is what we have written here. Now what is happening is that yeah, whatever the default behavior is there, that yeah, you know what, color is automatically inherited. So if I write something like span, and let's say I write Ola, then yeah, if I put section color red, then Ola is also becoming red, and this hello is also becoming red, right? Both are becoming red. But what if I don't want that? Is there a way to control the inheritance? So controlling the inheritance means what? Doing both things. Some things which are inherited, let's say color is inherited, I don't want to inherit that. That is one thing which I might want to do. Another thing is that something which is not inherited, something like width is not inherited, but I want to inherit it still from the parent, right? So something which is inherited, don't inherit it. Something which is not inherited, inherit it. All those things all those things we can control using some special properties given by CSS to us. These properties you might have seen at many places in like when you're inspecting elements, then you might have seen these words, but here is the good time to explain all of them. So there is something called inherit, which turns on inheritance, and then initial, unset, and revert. Okay, so we will see each of them one by one. So the idea is that let's see. Let's try to do inheritance of width. So right now let's remove this. Simply have something like this, where you know what, section has 50% rule applied, but that 50% rule is not automatically inherited to div, and that's why div is still 100% of its parent rather than 50%, right? What if I write something like this, so you understand, I could have written width is equal to 70%. I could hard code it, right? And then it will be 70% of the parent. But I don't want that. I want that whatever is, because if I change at one place, everything should be changed. So whatever is in the parent there, I just want to inherit that. So for that, if you write something like this, inherit as the value of the CSS property, so you can use something like this. So what it is saying that, you know what, generally width is not inherited, but in this case I want to inherit the width of the parent, and you see what happens now. You see that this thing has become 50%. So the whole thing section applied width 50% of its parent, and again the rule is applied here also, that it is 50% of the its parent. So again this thing is 50% of its parent, and again you could do the same thing. Let's say you could just change at one place 30%, and you see that everywhere it will change. You see this thing, whole section is 30% of the whole width, and this part, my div, is 30% of the its container. So this thing is 30% of whole thing, and this thing is 30% of its parent. So you see that at one place I'm changing, and everywhere it is automatically, and that's why I didn't want to hard code anything here, right? I'm just inheriting whatever the behavior is there at the parent level. And now here it might look like it is like useless thing, why it is, but you can understand that this thing you can apply on all the properties. So anything, font family, font size, line height, width, and you can understand anything which you think that whatever is so like font family is automatically inherited, so that is a bad example, but something like height, width, and other things which are not inherited, there you can apply these things to inherit, which is by default not inherited. You can inherit that using this thing. Second thing is something called initial. So this applies initial value of the property. Okay, so this applies initial value of the property. Okay, so let's see that color is already inherited and I don't want to inherit it. Okay, so it's like something like this, that something like, let's say this thing is let's comment the width thing for one moment. Okay, and let's say I have a span which is having simply Ola, right? So I'm saying that right now what is happening is that this Ola and hello both are becoming red, because this div is inheriting the color. But inside this div I can write something like color initial, and see what will happen. See, it has become black, which means that whatever was the initial thing, don't, basically this means that don't inherit it, right? You inherited it, but I don't want it. Whatever was the initial thing, black, that I'm trying to use, rather than so you can use this initial thing to disable inheritance of some property if you want. Okay, that is something. Third thing is unset. Okay, so okay, so let's see. So what is happening is that some places, let's say here width is 30%, here width is inherit. So you see that both things have happened. Both things have happened, that my width, and let's keep it 50% only. Let's keep it 50% only. So you see that both things have happened. My color was inheriting, but what I did, I stopped inheritance using this initial thing. My width is width was not inheriting, but I have inherited using the inherit attribute. So you see that width 50% is applied here, it has been inherited. What if I want to change that? So let's write another div, and since they are having same specificity, that's why whatever I write here, that will overwrite the earlier thing. That is fine. But what if I want to undo that? So in order to undo that, what I can do is that, you know what, this width I have inherited. What I can set width is equal to initial. So whatever was the initial behavior, just set it to that, and that's why you see that again it becomes 100%. So this thing which I set width inherit, that is now overwritten by this width initial, and I can write color is equal to, So you know what, I can write inherit. So what is happening? Color was not, I disabled the inheritance by putting initial, but now I'm saying that no, 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 again inherit. So by default it was inheriting. So if this was not there, then this was not needed. But somehow in some place in some CSS styles, you have written color initial, but now you want to re-enable, let's say, inheritance. Okay, then if you see, then again it is becoming red, which means that that has been again re-initialized, right, to the normal behavior. So what happens that there is something which we are learning here, that unset resets the property to its natural value. What are we doing here? Inheritance is natural value, but somehow earlier the thing was, we did some weird thing, and that's why we stopped the inheritance, and that's why we are trying to re-enable that. But then you have to remember to use the word inherit and something. So rather than using something like this, you could use something like this, but rather than using these various different values, you can use simply something like color unset and width unset. Okay, so what it is doing is that you don't need to like remember that what is inherited, and okay, you have to rewrite it inherit to go back to the default behavior, and what is not inherited, and by default I have inherited, so I have to use initial to set it to initial state. So understand, if you use unset, then you don't need to remember anything. You simply write unset and it does whatever was the default behavior, earlier behavior, right? So whatever was the natural value of that property, automatically it is set, rather than you remembering anything. So rather than writing something like this, if I write something like width and color unset, then you see that the same behavior is there. Okay, so as we saw earlier, if we don't have this, then the behavior was something like this, which was dictated by here. And if we write something like unset, then the behavior is something which would have been the earlier behavior. If this and this nothing was there, then this was the behavior, right? And that behavior we actually reset it to using this unset thing, and you see that the same behavior is there. Okay, now see something called revert. So revert applies the browser's default styling. Okay, so 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 this thing, for this thing, let's take another example. Okay, because what is the difference between the initial value and the revert value, that you can only see when at some places. So see, this is like at the property level, the value of the property level, but this thing is at the element level. Some elements are treated by browser differently. Okay, and those things you can control using revert. This will be more clear using an example. So let's take an example of something like this. Let's say this is, and then anchor tag link to my page, whatever. So you write link here. Okay, and you can add any path here, right? But what you can do is that you can use something like simply hash. Okay, so hash will be used to for later we'll see that scrolling the same, just going somewhere in the same page. You can see that in Wikipedia, if you go then sometimes you click and just goes to some other page, right? So let's say you write let's say what, Russia, Crimea. Okay, so okay, so if you see that you go to some link, and now if you see here that if I click here, then you see that Republic of Crimea is there, right? If I click here, then you see that URL, that we will be on the same page, but you see that just this hash thing is there, and that is going to just scroll the page to that particular section, right? We'll see that later, but the idea is that if you don't use anything, if you simply use hash and nothing after that, then still the same page will be opened, because I have not said where to go, right? But still I have. So this is just a trick, just a shortcut to fill something. So if you put empty, then it should not. What happens that sometimes in some browsers they will be not treating it as a link, right? So but if you put at least some value, then this will be treated as a link, right? So in some browsers that might happen. In Chrome, I think it should not be an issue. So you see, what was my intent of saying that? Let's say this a tag is there, right? A tag is having a different color. You see, this thing is not red. The whole thing is red. The whole thing, I said that color should be red. Okay, and let's remove the unnecessary things. So broadly was there, and we'll come back to this if needed. But right now, let's see. Okay, so we saw that, yeah, this thing is red. This thing is red, but what if this thing is red, but this link is not becoming red? Link is obviously, there's a browser. So browser is what is doing. That browser is saying that anchor tag is a special element which is link, and that's why I will make it blue no matter what is the color in your context, right? Now you could very well write something like section a tag, and might change my color to let's say brown. Okay, you can very well do that, and then the link will be changed to brown. That is fine. But by default, if you don't do something like this, then by default the color is blue. Okay. However, now let's see these things. Okay, these things one by one. What if I apply color? Let's say color is inherit. What will happen? So basically, we saw that for link tags, the color was not inherited. Okay, in general, color is inherited, but for link tags, color was not inherited, and that's why I wrote color inherit. And then we will see that now this is the same color as the whole thing. The whole thing is red, which was dictated by the color property given here. So now this a tag is also inheriting the color. Okay, that is what we had. What if we do something like initial? What do you think? What will happen if I write initial? So initially it was like blue. Will it become blue? You see, it is not blue. It has become black. Why? Why? Because this the color value is initially this black. The color value is initially black, and the color value is initially black, but in this context, for a element it was blue. But for a element it was blue because the browser said that for a element it should be blue. By default browser said that. But now you are saying that I want to have the normal text, whatever. If I don't have, let's say, anything, right, let's say, then everything was black, right? So here I am putting everything red, but for color of a link it should be initial whatever the text by default should be there, and that's why it is black. My point is that and let's say if you you put initial, and later after some place you again have a similar style and put, let's say, color is unset. What will happen? So in unset, what we discussed, in unset, it actually has the it sets to inherit or initial whatever is the default behavior, right? So you see that if I comment this, okay, and then refresh this, then what is happening is that it is becoming red. Why it is becoming red? See, what is happening is that unset says that what is the default behavior of color. What is the default behavior of color? What is the natural value of value for color? The natural value of color is inherit. and that's why unset is replaced by inherit, and that's why it is as good as writing color inherit, and that's why the color was inherited, and that's why it became red. You understand? You understand? So so the point is that we saw earlier that I can change it to initial, and then I could manually change it to inherit, and that was also red. I could manually change it to initial, and then this thing became the initial black. That is fine. And I try to unset it, and then you see doing unset it is becoming red. What if I want to go to that original state? That original state means what? If I don't have anything, then it was blue. What if I want to go to this blue behavior? What to do? See, if you don't have those things, then obviously it is blue, not a issue. But what if these styles are not in your control? Understand? Somewhere in some style sheet which you cannot touch, there this thing is already written. Now how to write something additional here? Something additional here, how to write such that this thing should become blue? Now we saw that whether we write inherit, initial, unset, in case of inherit and unset it is becoming red, and in case of initial it is becoming black, but there is no way we are trying to make it blue. That is where this fourth thing comes, revert. What revert does is that it applies the browser's default styling for that element, right? These things were working on that properties value, properties initial value, properties natural value, properties inheritance, right? These things were working on properties value, but here the all the properties the default behavior of browser for that element in that property, whatever is that, that thing is actually applied. So if I write now something like this, that section A, and color is revert, okay, and then you refresh, then you see that you have got the original thing whatever was happening, right? So if these sort of styles are out of your control, then later also you can get back that side of thing which was the browser default behavior, using something called color revert. Okay. One more thing. Earlier we saw that we have a section. So let's remove this thing. This is fine. Now earlier we saw that so div is okay. So I made, let's say div color is initial, and I made width as, let's say, inherit, right? Then what happened, that it had something like this behavior, and let's put some color green, let's say, right? Then it was something like this, that this color is now not, so if this thing would not have been there, then obviously this thing would be red and full width. The first thing I did, that I inherited the color, and that's why this thing is becoming like this. And if I width also I inherited, then this thing is like width is also half and color is not inherited, right? Now we discussed that if we want to go back to initial state, then what we did something like this, that div and color is inherit again. So I say that I stopped inheriting color, but I again want to get the inheritance, and that's why I wrote something like this. And for width, I will write that whatever the initial behavior was there, that is not inherit, just do that only. So this is right. Okay. Now what happens is that we also saw that no need to do this. In fact, we could simply do something like this, unset, and then this will also work. We saw that this will also work. Okay. Now there is something called all shorthand. So if you are confused, like let's say many properties are modified, and many things you are unsetting or something. Let's say you want to unset all of them at once. Okay. Then rather than doing color unset, width unset, and let's say 10 more properties unset, you can write something like this, that let's say if this thing was not there, then obviously this thing is not I wanted to reset everything. So I can write something like all right? And then after that unset. So all properties, just please unset it. If you refresh, you see something like this, right? Okay, so what is happening is that, see, this border and all and everything is unset. So in order to just have a border thing, just write border here so that it is still visible. Okay, okay, this is fine. This is fine, but you see that if I don't do anything, let's say I did not change anything, I did not even change the color behavior and width behavior, and that's why I don't need to unset it. But earlier this was not like this. If you see, this thing was refreshed and this thing was like color was same, but that green border was for whole thing, not only for this thing. Why is that is happening? That is happening because when we did something like this, see, we change color, we change width, and then we want to reset color and width, but all is not resetting color and width, all is resetting everything. And that's why something which you don't want to reset, that has also been reset. So you see that this behavior is happening because of many other things. So that's why you should not use all without knowing details. But what is happening here is that all unset is doing something else also. For example, you see that. So what will unset do? Unset will so what it will do to display the display block or display inline. These are like what happens that we discussed earlier, that if something is inline, you can make it a block, or if something is block, you can make it inline, right? So this behavior is there, but you see that this all is unsetting everything. Let's go to the documentation of display and let's see what is the initial value of display. So display, let's say Mozilla, and you go to display, and you generally at the end there will be something called initial value. Yeah, so initial value is inline. So this is what the problem is, that when we did all unset, then it set display to inline, and that's why that behavior was happening, that it is behaving like inline, like not, it is not taking full width or something like a block, because this thing on. So what we have to do is that we have to override it by, let's say, display block. And now if we refresh, then we see that whatever earlier behavior was there, that is now coming fine. Okay, so which meant that after doing all unset, you had to do this also, right? And that's why if you're not not at all aware that what has happened, and too much problem has happened, then do all unset and then properly change if something has broken, then you change it accordingly. However, as much as possible, try to avoid this thing and pick corresponding things, right? Pick corresponding things what are just needed, and just change that to unset rather than doing the whole thing, right? Just change that to unset, right, rather than doing the whole thing, and then you will get the same behavior. Okay, so now we have understood this all also. There is something called important declaration, which we will see in the next video.